Hi guys, it's Tech here. Welcome. And I wanted to go over defensive layers for the 3.16 meta shift, talk about what went well, what we can do differently regarding all the different defensive layers that are in the game. Before we get started, if you would please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It does really help me out. And also this week I am giving away a Headhunter. So this is the week of July the 18th, 2022. So if you have not seen that video, I will link it below and check it out because you could win a Headhunter on me. 2 of them in fact. But let's get started with the video. So for defensive layers, we do have Armour as the first one. And Armour is a form of defense that mitigates incoming physical damage from hits. Armor rating can be increased by wearing equipment, taking certain passive skills, using skills, and drinking flasks. The advantage of Armour is it does have the % additional physical damage reduction when hit, and it is hard capped at 90%, which means you can mitigate 90% of all physical damage hits, as long as your armor is high enough to compensate for that. The con is that it does not affect damage over time or elemental damage. For evasion is the first layer as far as priority is concerned of defense that increases a character's chance to evade incoming attacks. Evasion is opposed by the attacker's accuracy. Along with armor, energy, shield, and ward, evasion is one of the 4 defensive types that can implicitly appear on equipment. Evasion also gives an implicit chance to not receive critical strike from attacks. If an incoming critical strike hit succeeds the initial hit miss roll, a secondary check is performed to determine critical hit or normal hit. So effectively, if they were going to crit and you evade the hit, nothing happens. If they do in fact hit, you get a second save roll, which could prevent it from being a critical hit. The con to evasion is you are going to take bigger hits when the defense fails, as the roll fails. So if both rolls fails, you're going to take full damage, where armor reduces the % of damage you're taking. For energy shield is a form of defense that acts as an additional hit point pool on top of life. It does naturally recharge after 2 seconds, which is modifiable. The pro to energy shield is that as long as it isn't completely depleted, it prevents it from going to life or mana, depending on passive tree choices. The con is that the exception to it is chaos damage, which completely bypasses energy shield, and without a solution will immediately kill a pure energy shield based character. It does not lower any amount of incoming damage. So the previous 2, and basically everything that we're going to talk about for the rest of this, is going to lower the amount of incoming damage because the raw damage values in Path of Exile are extremely high. Energy shield does not mitigate any of that, so it has to be essentially paired with another defensive layer to be successful, or you have to have an enormously high energy shield pool to be relevant, much more so than you would need life. For Divine Shield, the way Divine Shield works is 3% of total physical damage prevented from hits. Recently is regenerated as energy shield per second. Cannot recover energy shield to above armor. So your armor value has to be higher than your energy shield value, and you typically want your energy shield value as high as humanly possible with Divine Shield. If the character is properly balanced with good layers, this is the second most successful way of staying alive. The con is it does require a more complex interaction, is you need to have higher armor, higher than ES, while still requiring a high energy shield pool and other ways to mitigate damage. Ghost Dance is a former ascendancy notable of the Trickster Ghost Dance is a keystone on the passive tree. It generates a Ghost Shroud every 2 seconds, up to a maximum of 3 Ghost Shrouds. When hit, a Ghost Shroud is removed and recovers energy shield equal to a percentage of your evasion rating. So the character does have to be hit for a Ghost Shroud to recover energy shield. This means that defensive mechanics that negate hits, such as evasion, dodge, and blocking, will prevent Ghost Shrouds from recovering energy shield when hits are negated. The con to Ghost Shroud is you have to balance energy shield has to be higher than ES, and you still want ES to be as high as humanly possible. Petrified Blood is a spell that reserves mana to protect the character's life in the low life threshold by causing a portion of the immediate life loss from hits take effect over time instead. At higher skill levels, the amount of life loss over time is reduced, even though the percentage of immediate life loss prevented remains constant. The pro to Petrified Blood is it can be used with different options. For example, it can be used while on full life with no life reserved. This allows for characters to be able to survive more damage from one single hit or multiple big hits. Life flasks are the only way to gain life above low life when using Petrified Blood. Other life gain sources will continue to work if temporarily dropping into low life. Con, as a drawback, the character cannot recover life above low life by any means except with flasks. Skills also gain an additional life cost while the character is above low life. So this is a way for a life-based character to help mitigate some incoming threat damage. Spell Suppression. In general, Spell Suppression gives easier access and more reliable spell damage mitigation for dexterity characters without reliance on specific uniques. It's also much more reliable than Spell Dodge, but has a lower maximum. Pro, this is the best single defensive layer per point in the game. Con, it requires another defensive layer, either Armour or Evasion, to prevent most deaths, and it's kind of a bummer. It's regulated specifically to the right side of the tree, and there's nothing like it on the left-hand side of the tree, which is kind of sad. Ward. Ward is a form of defense that reduces the damage taken from a hit equal to the amount of ward, then goes on cooldown. Ward recharges 5 seconds after it dissipates. Unlike Energy Shield, taking damage will not interrupt the ward restoration time. Pro, Ward can apply to all types of damage, which is huge. The con is there's not really enough access to Ward and its recharge modifier. If you could scale the recharge modifier lower and have a bigger ward threshold, it would be a more valuable asset. Also, I would love to see like a passive or maybe a keystone on like the left hand side of Witch, kind of between like Witch and Templar, that gave you a flat amount of ward based on how much energy shield you have. I think something like that would really make it a little more appetizing and a little more sought after. And you don't want to have it where it's mixed with spell suppression and stuff like that. So putting it way over there makes a lot of sense. For block is a layer of defense that will entirely prevent damage from an enemy hit unless modified by some outside effect, like glancing blows. The chance to block is a random roll made per attack or cast. Block is capped by a default at 75%. Characters do not have any base block. Pro, blocking a hit prevents all damage and harmful on-hit effects such as status ailments. Con, the attack must be a hit in order to be blocked, therefore block does not work against damage over time. Damage shift. Incoming damage can be shifted to another damage type. It is usually done by utilizing an item which offers the modifier % of X damage taken as Y. An example of this would be 10% of physical damage taken as fire. Some of the incoming damage is shifted to or from physical. The aftership value is used in the armor calculation. This can be exploited. Con, it is important to note that this is not damage conversion, as shifted part of damage does not retain its original damage property, so it won't get mitigated either twice or by the more favorable method. Resistances. So resistances affect the amount of damage taken of specific damage types when all of its forms have failed. Enemies can also have resistances, which are indicated beneath their life bar. Each damage type, except physical, has its own resistance value, which is viewable on the defense tab in the character panel. Physical damage is mitigated by armor. Pro. Maximum resistances are hard capped at 90%, so you can prevent 90% of all of the elemental and chaos damage. Con. Balancing and getting enough resistance across all 4 types, lightning, cold, fire, and chaos, can be challenging. Not for all builds, but for a lot of builds. Specifically life-based builds typically struggle to cap chaos, and energy shield builds typically struggle to get a high enough energy shield pool while balancing the other 3. So this is going to be kind of in order of survivability. So if with no changes made whatsoever, no changes being made, in order of importance, you have energy shield with ghost dance. And all these are going to be multiples because you should always have layers of defense. That's going to be the weakest of the recommendations. Energy shield or evasion and spell suppression. Those are the 2 weakest, even though spell suppression is by far the best per point. The next is going to be divine shield with armor and energy shield balanced with block. And that's assuming block cap. And you're probably going to want some kind of a recovery mechanic like Aegis Aurora as your shield. The next is armor with spell suppression and block. And then last but not least would be Petrified Blood, armor, evasion, spell suppression, and block. And I know that sounds like a lot, but I had a character that did that. And it is insane. The lightning strike character, because Juggernaut basically armor caps you with just brass dome. And the notable that doubles your armor. That essentially armor caps you. Petrified Blood is very easy to run as long as you have a high enough number there of, like, I was running like 1500 life, 15 to 2000 life depending, and that's plenty considering all the different layers of mitigation. So basically what we were doing is running Determination, Grace, had capped spell suppression thanks to Mage Blood, and then we had a little bit of like dual wield block with Petrified Blood in. That particular character was just very, very, very hard to kill, and it did pretty good damage. So that would be kind of the goal if you are wanting something. Now there is a lot of balancing and a lot of sacrificing to play a build like that. But as far as what we know now without any changes being announced, this will give you a pretty good idea of where you want to look at, and I would only look at the bottom 3. I wouldn't even consider the top 2 an option, nor would I consider pure energy shield, pure evasion, or pure armor. I don't think they are strong enough anymore to be used by themselves. I think you have to have at least 2, and realistically you need at least 3. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you're really looking for at least 3. So as far as builds, I would want to be in either the Divine Shield, so somewhere in the top left-hand portion of the tree, armor with spell suppression and some block, so that would be the bottom left to right portion of the tree, or Petrified Blood, armor, evasion, spell suppression, and block, which would still be in the bottom left to right portion of the tree. Hopefully this helps, and hopefully this gives you an idea of what to expect and what kind of builds you may be looking at. I'll also do a too early review of some different, maybe underrated bossing characters that we will do before patch notes come out. Kind of some spitball ideas. I am planning on doing a bossing character for League Start. I will most likely have an all-arounder and a bossing character both up for the initial launch of the league. But for League Start, I do want to preface, I will most likely be playing a bosser just because we don't know what the content is going to be. And I think that going the route of a bosser will just probably give me a better experience overall than going the route of, oh, okay, so if I do this thing and I do it, and I do like an all-arounder, it may work great, or I may really struggle at the end game, and I don't want to really struggle at the end game. I want to have a easy time with the bosses, even if I don't have an easy of a time mapping. And of course, this will also be determined by the league mechanic. Hoping for boat league, we'll see. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. And I will catch you on the next one. Have a great day, Exiles.